Alright guys, this video is going to be a little bit shorter today, and the reason for that is because I'm finally getting around to organizing my garage a little bit. So you can see, oh, it's nice. It's getting there. It's not nearly as messy as it is. Let me show you what I'm building right now. So I'm welding up these little, I don't know what you call them, hangers for some steel in my shipping container here so that I can finally get all this steel off the floor. I don't know if you saw, but it was pretty much just laying around in the shop, and it was driving me crazy. And we get monsoons out here pretty regularly in the summer, and I can't leave them outside. So, all right, so let me finish up this organization, and then I'll get to the trophy truck. All right, so here's how it turned out. I think it looks fantastic. Finally have room for all my steel off the floor and out of the way. All right, now onto the trophy truck. Alright, this is how the buggy's looking right now. What I was going to do was pull the engine and transmission out of it, and then that way I could do the J-mod to the transmission, and then I could reseal the engine and put in all new plugs and gaskets, but I don't have the gaskets for the transmission in yet. Those are on order. Those will be a couple days out. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get the cooling system figured out, and I did decide I'm going to at least try and put it up front. I would like to have the weight in the back, but it's just going to be a lot easier to do it in the front. And then back here I want to get my fuel system figured out. And the other benefit for that is going to be that then I can start to run the fuel lines, and then I can start to do the electrical before I pull the engine and transmission out. That way I don't need to pull the engine out, put it back in, keep going back and forth with all the electrical. So that's what I'm going to be working on right now. Now I was given a good idea from one of the viewers. If you see how I have my intake right now, I thought this was the best idea to put the air intake up here, and I think it looks pretty awesome. But what he mentioned was I could have just turned this down, and then I could do the intake right here, and it would give me better visibility while driving, and it would make obviously it would cover up the top here. And I think that that is a fantastic idea. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I'm going to pull the top off and see if that will work. And the other benefit will be is that I warped it just a little bit here. You see how it's sticking up? And so here and here, it's kind of driving me nuts. So what I might do is I might slice it right here and then do a new half cover on this side, and then bring that intake back down. And we'll see how that looks. So I'll do that first before I start on the cooling system, and then we'll just see if it works. Alright, this is how I've got it set up for the air intake now, and this makes a lot more sense to me. So, thanks for the good idea. I'm going to redo the cover on the top, and that's okay because this one was a little bit warped anyways because I went a little crazy, but that's what happens when you build things at midnight. So, I'll do a new cover across the top. Thank you so much for the idea, and if you see me making other mistakes, keep them coming. I do think that the reason I wanted the air intake up on top was for water, but this thing's two-wheel drive, so I'm not going to be going through anything too deep. So I thought about doing a half cover like I had mentioned, but with the Bailey shear and the fact that I already had to have the bead roller out, it really didn't make much difference to do the full or a half. So I ended up just doing a full new cover here. And it's going to be nice. I'm not going to have that giant hole for the intake to poke through, and have lots of rain and dirt and dust get in and out of, and it should keep it cooler inside the cab. So I think it's going to end up being a lot nicer. What a good idea. Thanks, Brandon. So to install the front radiator, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I knew that I was going to use the factory radiator just because it's there and it works and it's cheap. And I knew that it would fit because it fit within the frame rails before, and so I knew it would again. But I didn't know what angle I'd be able to get it at with all the tubing around, or what bracketry I'd be able to use. So I just kind of monkey with it here for a bit and try and see. I really want to use that lower mount because it's got two holes in it where the radiator just slides right into. And then on the side of the radiator are two more mounts that originally mounted to the top of the frame rail that I now need to find another place. So here I'm just trying to figure out how I can get it the most vertical I can possible to get the most airflow while still fitting it in that tight little spot that I've got. So these little tabs right here that the radiator mounts from are just maybe 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch too big to fit inside the tubes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shave those down just a little bit on each side, and then that way hopefully I can use the factory mount mounted to this and then kind of angle it in, and then I could do the 2 mounts right to these tubes here. And we'll see how that goes. So first I'll shave them down, see if it fits, and go from there. Alright, I've got the radiator pretty close to how I want it. What I'm going to do is take this mounting bracket here, and then let me show you how I'll cut it. I'm going to cut it right around here like this, and that way we just have this flat portion here, and then that way I can either weld or bolt this to the tube, and then these unbolt here so I can take the radiator in and out. So that's the plan. I'll do this for each side, and then I'll mount these suckers right here. Mount this, and then the radiator looks like it's going to end up being pretty close to flat with this bar, which is of course where we want it. I desperately do not want it to sit too low because I don't want it to be damaged. I have had radiators damaged out in the desert, and it sucks. One interesting thing you can do when you're out in the desert, if you do damage your radiator, is you can put an egg in the radiator, and then the yolk will find its way through, and as it's trying to leave, it'll cook itself and seal up. I've done that to get me home. I've also filled it with oatmeal. Neither one of those are great ideas, so I'm going to try and avoid that by building this properly. Alright, I finally got it all mounted up. This is how it's looking. I think it came out really nice. I really like the angle that it's at. It's not too aggressive, so I should get pretty good airflow still through here. For the top mount, I just welded up the old bracket after I cut it. And then for the bottom, I used the lower factory radiator support, and it ended up only needing a little bit of cutting on the inside here, and then I was able to weld it on the bottom and then weld it on the top. It looks like I'm about 4 feet from the upper radiator connection to the top of the motor over here, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to get that there. I'm probably gonna use tubing in the middle, just a metal tube, and then I'll just run a short length of rubber hose on each side, but I still have to decide that. So I guess next I'll move on to the fuel tank. Let's get this sucker mounted up for good, and then again, I still need a spare tire mount. Well, I don't know if I'll do that now or not, but I'll do the fuel tank next. All right, I've got to do a couple things here before I can put the fuel tank back in the fuel tank box that I made. One of them is on the fuel assembly here. I do need to add a new screen. The sock that's on there is okay, but it was $1.94 from Rock Auto, so I figure better safe than sorry. And then over here for the inlet, I've got a piece of, this is just a muffler tubing that I had lying around, some mild steel, and I'm going to weld this up against that. And then I'm going to put a little bead along the top here so that I can then just use a regular fuel hose that'll then go through the box and then up to the remote filler. All right, I've got the fuel inlet welded up. You can see the little weld on that little lip there. And what I'm going to do is flip the tank over, fill it up with water, and then make sure that it doesn't leak. All right, I've got this sucker set up outside filled with water, and there are no leaks. I just want to show you guys inside. And I'm realizing that I show you guys the inside of fuel tanks a lot. Very clean looking. So now I can drain it and dry it and it'll be good to go. All right, I've got the new sock on the fuel pump unit here. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint just the inner portion here, just this part here. The hose slips over it, and so I wanna paint this part, but I don't wanna paint here because when the hose goes over it, the vapors will dissolve that paint and then it'll end up in the tank. But I'll do both those things and then this tank will be ready to go. All right, the fuel tank fit perfectly in there. I really like how the fuel line and electrical, how close it ended up being, so I'm just gonna have to make a little plate here that'll go on after the fact. Here's how the inlet is looking. I did paint it on this part right here, and I'm going to have to drill a hole right here so I can get the rubber hose over it. So I'll go get a hole saw and do that now. All right, I've got the fuel tank mounted in the back. I think it looks pretty good. I've got to find a way to put the fuel filler mount somewhere on the frame and get that mounted there. That'll be nice. And then I think I'll do a 45-degree bend, so I've got to order up a fuel hose. But other than that, all I have to do is hook up to the factory connections right here and then just plumb those into the motor and to the electrical, and I'll be good to go. I think it came out pretty nice, and I really like where it's sitting. So that's it for this episode. Unfortunately, all I was able to get to was the fuel tank. I fixed the engine cover. I sure do like that. And then I've got the radiator set up. So it wasn't a ton, but at least I got my shop organized and I've got my steel put aside. I should be able to get more done on this in the near future. The Grumman is out getting polished. I finally found somebody that could take that over, which is fantastic. And so that gives me more time for the trophy truck.